So today's theme is connection through character strengths. So why this topic? Well, this morning in my inbox from a newspaper organization or a news organization called The Conversation, don't know how many of you are aware of that network, there was an article that said that we should look at 3 ways to help our children to continue to grow in terms of social connection. Even though they're not necessarily going to school at the moment, especially here in the US, more and more schools are saying, school districts are saying that they will be sticking with online tuition, at least for the first few weeks of term. And it said we needed to use 3 ways to engage our children in developing social skills because they're not going to school. And of course, part of the reason or part of the benefit of going to school in person is to experience the ups and downs of navigating personal relationships with people in school. And that may be other students in school, it may be teachers in school. There are all sorts of interactions that our kids experience when they go to school. And this set me thinking 2 things. One was that in this article, they were extolling the virtues of us working on this with our children. And all I could think was that parents at the moment have so many things that they're taking on. They're having to teach their children, homeschool their children, somehow or other juggle work or finances or whatever it is that they're struggling with in terms of just keeping the family going. There are so many things to be done. And now we're saying, and here's another thing, you want to spend time with your kids promoting social connection and social awareness. Very valuable. And at the same time, how? How do we do that without completely burning out? And then I got thinking as well about people I've been coaching in groups typically who have been highlighting that they too are feeling isolated. So now we've potentially got adults who are feeling isolated from their social network, and work is a big place for socializing. It's one of the main places that people actually make connections. And so they're feeling isolated. They're cut off from their co-workers, seeing them face to face maybe. And now they're supposed to cultivate social connection in their children. So they're feeling potentially a little lost themselves. And they're still supposed to take on this additional task of helping their children to build that ability to connect with other people. So I started to think about how do we do that? And I thought what we could do today is we'll actually do a practical strengths spotting exercise. So I was very fortunate about 2 years ago now to be on the course with Ryan, the mindfulness-based strengths practice course. And there was a lovely lady in the class called Stena from Iceland. And in the middle of class, 2 or 3 weeks in, her husband had a heart attack. And she shared this amazing story with us. And it's amazing for multiple reasons. One is it's very personal. So it's that vulnerability that has been mentioned by a few people, being vulnerable and being brave about sharing your story. She was also brave enough to spot their strengths in the story. And it highlighted for me several things. One is that in the most extraordinary circumstances, we can still spot strengths. And we aren't always in tune with all the strengths that we're using, as you'll see from the story. And I asked her permission to be able to use this story in other situations, and she gladly gave it. And I've actually used this story in many, many workshops, particularly in the workplace. So I started out with my workplace workshops believing that it made sense to have a story that related to whatever was going on at work. You know, so if I was talking to project managers, maybe it was a project management story. If I was talking to leaders, then it was about the struggles of leadership or whatever. But what I discovered was this story connected with everybody, adults more than children, I think, but I'm generally working with adults. And so I thought today I would share this story with you, and you will have the opportunity to do some strength spotting yourself. So why am I doing that today? And the reason is that as we're looking for ways of keeping connections alive, this character strength spotting is something that we can do anywhere. As you can see from this story, even in the most difficult times, this lady was able to think about strengths and how to apply her strengths and how to use them. And it occurred to me as I was reading that article about how to engage your children that a character strength spotting activity is something that we may be able to integrate into our everyday. Maybe it's over dinner, maybe it's over breakfast. Maybe you have them journal or draw pictures of the strengths they've seen in other people, but to get them to really pay attention to who they've seen, what they've seen, and what those strengths are that are shining forth for them. And the beauty is you can do it anywhere with anything. It can be from a book you're reading. It can be a movie you're watching. It can be a poem you're reading. It can be a piece of art that you're looking at. So just really think about the person creating that and the people involved in something like making a movie, and think about what strengths did they use in order to get there. So you don't have to be doing a lot of interaction with people one-on-one every day, or even seeing people in person. If you put this character strengths focus onto other things that you're doing, and let's face it, a lot of us are watching, binge watching things on Netflix at the moment, and rather than just watching it go by, we can be thinking about, well, what strengths are we seeing there? And there are other questions we can ask ourselves, like, are the strengths that I'm drawn to, are the characters that I like in these shows, do they have the same strengths as me? Is it a comfort level with similar signature strengths that I see in them? Or are they complementary strengths? Maybe my signature strengths are like mine, appreciation and bravery and fairness and gratitude. And I'm seeing someone whose strengths are forgiveness and humility and leadership and social intelligence. And that I'm drawn to these characters that have these complementary strengths. So really just thinking about what strengths are you seeing? What stands out for you? What's attractive about the characters that you see in terms of character strengths? And what is it that maybe puts you off some characters? Is it maybe overuse of a strength or underuse of a strength? Maybe they seem like they just really don't care about other people. I've been watching a documentary about the Murdoch empire. So Rupert Murdoch and his newspaper empire. And at various times, it seems as though fairness and kindness and love are just not part of the picture, and it kind of grates on me that there's so little regard for other humans unless they're immediate members of the family. So things like that, asking yourself these questions around, how do I connect to these characters? How do I connect to these stories? How do I connect with my loved ones through character strengths? And someone mentioned earlier about sending gratitude letters. One of the things you can do if you're distanced from people that you're close to, and we've had several people ask, what do I do when I'm completely alone, is that you can call or message or email or write a card or write a letter to someone you know and highlight for them the character strengths that you see in them when you are able to be with them. And it helps you to build that connection and still feel as though you're close to the person. So is everybody ready for their strength spotting exercise? Yep, so a couple of nods. Thank you for that. All right, so I'm going to read this story. And as I say, Steinar is from Iceland. It's written in English, fortunately, otherwise it would be hard for me to read and for many people to understand. I'm going to read it exactly as she has written it. And I'm going to read through the first part of the story, and then I'm going to pause. And I invite you during the story or when I take the pause to put into the chat the character strengths that you spot in the story. So listen carefully to what I'm telling, what the story is, and think about what strengths are involved in this. And they're in front of you as a reminder so that you can think about which strengths you're hearing about. So the title of the story is The Impact of a Heart Attack on My Understanding of Strengths and Mindfulness. In last week, our second week in the course, my husband had a heart attack. He is a strong man and came walking home from work in the morning after being there for just an hour or two. He said he felt a heaviness in his chest and pain in his jaws and in his left shoulder. Did I think he should go to see the doctor? I thought so, and I drove him to the hospital near us. He was immediately put on an ambulance. I insisted that I go with him, and we went to Reykjavik on blue lights. In the ambulance, we stayed relatively calm, talked and joked. I had my hand on his head to calm us both, but I will never forget the moment when I lost that calm and the reality of the situation became clear. I looked forward. I sat in the behind, out of the front window, and saw the biggest road in Reykjavik, Miklabraut, empty. The police had closed all intersections with police cars with blinking blue lights, and we drove on priority speed straight to the cardiology department. He was treated for 100% and 90% blocked coronary arteries, and in less than an hour it was all over, and he sat laughing in his hospital bed. In the meantime, I had first collapsed, shaking and with tears, as soon as he was in the hands of the doctors, and then I sat and waited in a quiet room. I didn't have my phone, so I could not call our children and parents. I decided to be in this moment, even if it was a hard one, and I sat down and turned my chair to the window and had another moment I think I will never forget. Out of the window, I saw Hallgrímskirkja, one of the defining buildings in Reykjavik. In the foreground were big brittle cone pines. The sun was coming up. The time was between 11 and 12. It is still mostly dark in Iceland at this time of year. Lovely winter light, yellow, pink, light blue, cold but beautiful light. It started snowing, these rare big snowflakes, which we call Hundslakadriffa in Icelandic, dog's paw snow. And even more rare, no wind. The snowflakes floated down calmly. It was such a powerful yet peaceful moment. I felt like the universe had made this scene just for me to calm me down. I accepted it, looked inwards, and tried to sort out what I was feeling. Even if I was worried, I trusted he was in the best hands. Then he came up, laughing as I said, and since then I've been overwhelmed with the feeling of gratitude. I'm thankful to all the people who took part in the healthcare, the ambulance drivers, the people who stopped at the intersection. I appreciate that the weather was harmless and the roads almost clean. In the days before, the road was closed because of snow and storm. And later this day, it snowed a lot. I am glad I was home when my mate returned home, or he might have had a nap instead of seeking help. A lot to thank for. I am even grateful for not having my phone. If I had missed the wonderful window moment and made myself and others worry about the situation. Instead, I called everyone afterwards with good news. Then when life got back to normal in a few days, I took up my mindfulness practice, and I noticed that the gratitude spilled over into most of what I did. For example, in the practice of doing some routine mindfully, such as showering, I felt gratitude to parts of my body I normally don't give any thanks, like my toes. And in the shop, I appreciate all the selection of all kinds and think of all the people and work involved. I am not trying, it just spills over. So I have seen, I'm going to take a pause there. I have seen lots of strengths going by as we consider this story. So I'm going to give you a moment to put in any other ones that you can think of. So we've got appreciation, self-regulation, gratitude, teamwork. There was a hint there because she actually recognized gratitude herself. Yeah, all the wisdom strengths, right? So creativity and curiosity and love of learning and judgment and all of those. Honesty, prudence, social intelligence. Yes, so many, many strengths. And I'm just guessing as I see these go by, but I would say that between you, we've probably collected around about 17 or 18 strengths that we've noticed between us. Some people have noticed more, some people have noticed very specific ones. Appreciation for beauty, yes, that comes up with the amazing views that she sees. And I love the dog's paw snow. I can almost imagine what that's like, where they just float down and there's no sound whatsoever. I always love that kind of snow till it melts. And yes, she's being mindful and everything else. So that's the first part of the story. And in this, you've noticed all these different strengths. So if you just think for a moment about someone else that you might direct that kind of attention to, and it didn't take us long, just a few minutes. So you direct some attention towards other people, whether it be someone you're close to, or someone in a television show, or someone in a movie, or someone in a book, and apply that same curiosity and ask yourself, what strengths do you see? And as I mentioned before, maybe what strengths do they overuse or underuse, and how do you relate to that character, that person that's in front of you? So the other side of this story is that it is a really great way to highlight how strengths blind we are. And one of the reasons I encourage people to do strength spotting, and Ryan does as well, strength spotting in other people, is it's very often easier to recognize strengths in someone else than in ourselves. And here's a demonstration. So remember, we've picked out about 17 or so character strengths between us. This is how she finishes the story. Sorry about how long it is. I am obviously still in the phase where I have a need to talk about this. I am not finished yet because I have thought a lot of what strengths we showed and want to share that learning with the group. You're supposed to show your strongest character strengths in time of crises. Mine is fairness and his is judgment. And surprisingly, the strengths I think we both used and helped us most were humor, hope, love, and perseverance. That's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 strengths that she spotted in her story. So on the one hand, we've got this amazing list of strengths, and after this is over, I'll save the chat and we'll collect together all the strengths. Like every so often I write to Stana and I say, we've just done this with another group, and here are all the strengths we spotted in your story as a group. And I'll give examples of how we saw those different strengths. And she's always surprised, because in her mind, she was leaning on 1 or 2 strengths. Even the appreciation of beauty and excellence, even though she described it in detail, she didn't recognize that in herself. So that's another challenge, and why I'm bringing this around to connection, is that as we do strength spotting with other people, they are also going to feel more comfortable about strength spotting with us. And one of the things that I really recommend for people with kids, if you are having dinner together, is to do some sort of strength spotting over dinner. So you're all together and you can share a story. You could have them tell their story of their best moment of the day, and then have everyone spot strengths in them and take it in turns to go around the table. And it's in the middle of doing something else. It isn't adding another completely distinct task. So, and the same thing with your work colleagues. If you are meeting with people online on Zoom, just because you're on camera doesn't mean that you can't think about the strengths you've seen in them before, the strengths you're seeing in them now. Maybe you're seeing different strengths in them as you hear little snippets of their story in these difficult times. And highlight those strengths for them. And what you'll find is, over time, they start highlighting back, and they start highlighting for other people. There's a ripple effect. So that was our activity for the day. Because it was rather meditative and took quite a bit of concentration, I don't actually specifically have a meditation. But what I am going to do is take a moment and just ask you to think about what comes up for you as a result of this exercise. What ideas do you have about moving forward? And obviously we invite comments from the audience at this point, but I would love to hear what that felt like for you, what you learned from doing it, what you're going to do on the basis of what you've heard and thought about today. Who would like to share? And we'll just take a moment and think about it. So Denise wants to share with us. Hold on, I'm going to unmute you. So Denise, I think you're unmuted now.
Yeah. I'm in a bereavement support group, and it's only our 4th Zoom meeting. And I think this strength spotting would work so well when I listen to each person's story. There's about 6 people in my group, and we're all local to our town. We've all lost someone to cancer within the last year or so. Some of us just months away from it. And this is just going to be so inspiring to me to just pay a little bit more attention and direct it towards listening for what their strengths are, and hopefully being able to share that with them in a very gentle friendship way.
That's
So
wonderful,
thank you.
Denise. So I'm sorry that you're going through such difficulties on top of everything else that's going on. And at the same time, what a wonderful thing to be able to give to other people, because everybody in that group is probably feeling a little hollow and lost and uncertain. And to have someone be able to say, you know what I see in your story? I see tremendous love, perseverance, whatever it is. And it's a very positive, reinforcing thing for people.
And
Thank
I
you.
have just one brief thing.
Yeah.
I don't belong to a church or a community group. I don't do a lot of volunteering. I'm a very independent person. And so this is a way to help me feel like I am being contributing, that I am being part of a little community and I'm helping. I don't do a lot of volunteering. So sometimes I almost feel like, why don't you get out there and help like everybody else? But I do it in my own little way. But this is actually more expressive. So
Well, thank you,
thanks.
Denise. I'm glad that you enjoyed it, and finding the way that we can most effectively and most positively contribute to people is the secret, right? So if this is something that calls to you, you'll do it brilliantly and people will really benefit from it. And it's quality, not quantity. So, you know, finding a few people who really benefit from such positive feedback is just, you've no idea what the ripple effect of that might be from them to other people. There you go.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. Well, I was hearing the story, and then Denise and Colin, and I was thinking about this model that you have for strengths. And I thought with kids and adults, because we're talking about mind strengths, intrapersonal strengths, you know, people was coming up with different ones. And I think it's because also it resonates with each of us. If you're a mind more person, if you're a heart. And so in one of your books, see, I don't know if you see it.
Oh, yes, the expression map. Yes.
I love it because I thought this could be a great activity for the family. You know, you spot strengths on each other and then you plaster them.
Mm-hmm.
And so the kids can see how they actually process everything, more with the mind, the heart, and how different we all are.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a way of connecting, especially if you go to the interpersonal, then you can connect with yourself and teach them how to connect with others. I think it was very inspiring, your story.
Thank you, Corinna. Yeah, so for those who aren't familiar with it, that circle, that circumplex, it's actually in the Character Strengths Interventions book, is where Corinna's looking at it, I think. It's also now, there's an updated version of it that is in the new version of the report. So the top 24 character strengths report that's available on the website came out a couple of weeks ago. So thank you for that, Corinna. Loretta, let me see if I can unmute you. Everything's unmuting in slow motion today.
Hello. Hello. God bless. This is Loretta in Los Angeles.
Hi,
and
Loretta.
Denise, I wanted to say thank you for sharing. I'm a former cancer survivor, 15 years, and your strength came through strongly that I recognize, or the spirituality and the kindness and love to bring such a group together, you know. So anyway, I wanted to affirm you there, and I wanted to say in the story of the case study there, I'm feeling a little bit more inclined now to approach my granddaughter a little different. She is diagnosed with sickle cell, so there are a lot of emergency hospital visits. And, you know, we all kind of get a little anxious and crazy, but yet she's still 21. A 21-year-old and a 72-year-old, you know, so there's tension and stress. So what I've gleaned from the story is that when we're in these heightened states of emergency, that I am to now begin to look at her strengths that it takes for her to even manage the pain. Before I just called her my warrior princess, but now I can like narrow it down to what kind of bravery it takes for her to just take herself to the hospital, which is what her parents taught her to do, and how kind the people are to her when she shows up. So I'm seeing a whole different perspective on how to just be a better support, a stronger support to her when we're running to and fro to the hospital. Sometimes it can be 2 or 3 times a week, and it wears on me. But at the same time, I see how the Spirit of God really gives me another level of functioning with her in terms of just being grateful that she's alive, and that the hospital staff, they go right into gear. They know exactly what to do and to treat her immediately. So this story really kind of took a little fog out of my head in terms of how
Well, that's wonderful, Loretta, and thank you for sharing that. I'm sorry to hear that your granddaughter's dealing with sickle cell. That's a really tough diagnosis.
Yes.
And at the same time, as you said, she's in her 20s, and being able to focus on wonderful qualities that she's leveraging. And of course, you've got 70-something and 20-something. You have all that wisdom. So, and experience and everything that she will dismiss, but still it will be of value. And then you're expressing that kindness and gratitude and everything. What a kind perspective to take, that you can be more focused on specific strengths. So
so
thank you so much for sharing.
All right.
And Catherine.
Hey, Ruth, can you see me?
Hi, Catherine.
Hey. I had a colleague, she was brought into an emergency situation at her church. They were supposed to do a teen retreat with all the teenagers. And it's normally in person and super emotional, and they connect. And because of COVID, they couldn't do it. So, and it was about 60 teenagers. So she said, well, why don't we do character strengths? So she tagged a few of the kind of teen leaders, asked them to write best self essays, and then all the kids, all the teenagers, strength spotted it in their, with their leaders. And then they broke up in small groups, and then they did the same thing. After 6.5 hours of this, the teens still wanted to be on there, and they said it was better than any retreat they've ever had. And when you asked them, like, what was the biggest impact, they felt that they were seen, that they felt they were really seen for who they were and who they are, and also because it was in a spiritual context, it's also like, oh, these are gifts that you've been given and endowed, and it connects you to your creator. So it's super powerful. It was kind of a prototype. We haven't done anything like this. So when we got on today, Ruth, and you had us do it, I just loved it. Exactly. So thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome, and I'm glad you found it beneficial. And it's amazing what effect it can have on people in terms of making them feel seen. So thank you very much for sharing that feedback. Renata, I'm going to unmute you.
Hello, Ruth. Hello, everybody. This exercise was very important to remind me about how our lives change when we started to look, to see the strengths, the stories with the lengths of strengths, and how we can be more sensitive to see the strengths in our lives. And I think that I'm trying to do is to talk, when I speak with someone, even in difficult situations, I'm trying to spotting their strengths, and then people still stay very surprised, because sometimes they don't recognize that strength, and when I spot it, they feel more strong. And another thing there was thinking about during the story is to start to tell stories to my boy, he's 5-year-old, spotting some strengths to make him start to understand things about it. And another thing that I'm seeing in my life too is that when we try to see the strengths in the stories and in our lives, we start to make a strengths culture, and people start to speak with you, always remembering about the strengths. And a lot of people came to me to talk, oh, how can I study that? How can I know more about strengths? And it's become so big, and it's so nice to help to change the eyes to see the world with this lens.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that, Renata. And yeah, it's amazing how it becomes very intriguing to people once they experience that, having strength spotted and their qualities being seen in such a positive way. So I don't see any more hands up, and it is 26 my time. Thank you all so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. Thank you for participating so enthusiastically in the strength spotting. I will definitely pull out all those strengths that we highlighted, and I will give you some feedback when I hear from Stena as to what her reaction was. As I say, she's always astonished. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Next week, we have a very special guest. Gwendolyn Van Sant is going to be joining us. She works with an organization in Massachusetts called Bridge. She and her co-founder started it 11 years ago. And they do a lot of work helping people with education and experiences to help them with racial equity. And one of the things that she and her organization provides is something called the Happiness Toolbox, which is all based very much on character strengths. So she's an amazing woman. She's done amazing things, worked with great organizations, and we're really looking forward to greeting her next week to talk about character strengths and happiness and how we can navigate these difficult times in other ways using our character strengths. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody. Sorry if you were expecting a meditation. Next time, definitely. And thank you, everybody who shared your stories. I wish you all the best with your character strength spotting. And I look forward, please share with us what happens. You know, Loretta, Denise, tell us what happens when you take those strengths, as Renata did. You know, she's telling us what happens as she's taking those strengths out to other people. We'd love to hear what the feedback is on how it changes the dynamic. All right, bye everybody. Thanks very much. Oh, thank you, Deborah, for sharing.